Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Kohler. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm absolutely thrilled to welcome today somebody I am honored to call my friend, my mentor, longtime collaborator, and dear leader friend, Howard Brandeisky. Howard, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for those kind words.
Oh, absolutely. It was my pleasure. And for our audience purposes, I got to meet Howard, gosh, going back to 2001, 2002, approximately, when he had the good fortune of interviewing with him to work at Kraft Foods. Howard also happened to be an alum to the same university I went to for business school, University of Chicago. Go Maroons, and have considered him a dear friend and mentor ever since. And I'm also honored to have him on my firm, Audira Labs board of advisors. So I'm just so grateful, Howard, that you were kind enough to join us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, for our listeners' benefit, you've had an amazing leadership journey, and I know I won't cover all the highlights, but in addition to a very extensive corporate career, you are a parent, you are a mentor, you are a volunteer, just to name a few. Would you mind providing a quick background for our listeners today?
Well, first from the career point of view, I've spent my entire career, 36 years in the consumer products industry, actually, mainly in marketing roles, but I started my career in finance, which I'm very proud of. Started my career with a company that no one's heard of anymore, which is General Foods.
Oh, yeah.
Merged with Kraft, and so I think of myself as a Kraft person, and spent over 20 years at Kraft. Number of different business units, a number of great brands. And it was just what a wonderful 20 plus years, met great people like yourself, and really a formative experience in my career. Then after that, I went to a company called John B. Sanfilippo and Son, family-run nut business, maker of Fisher Nuts, as well as a number of other fine nut brands. Also a big provider of private label products to the retail trade, and also food service and industrial manufacturers. So spent 10 years there, which was a great experience. And now I am with Phoenix Strategic Advisors, a boutique consultancy focused on the middle market. Our goal is to help our clients accelerate profitable growth. So that's the professional life. And personally, two kids, two wonderful kids, who has been a joy to watch grow up, and I'm very proud of both of them. And then I've had the pleasure of, getting involved in some volunteer organizations, serving on your advisory board, which is an honor. So certainly try to keep myself busy. Appreciate the opportunity to do all that.
Well, Howard, you are just an absolute delight to learn from and to collaborate with. And on that point, given the many experiences you've had as a leader, and this continues, I'm sure, for you, what are two or three of the key leadership lessons you've learned along the way that you might share with our listeners today?
Well, I think, there's earlier in my career, I think it was, the fashionable leadership model, if I can call it that, was, I think, what is sometimes called the great man or the great woman model of leadership. This notion that you need someone with great charisma, someone who's all-knowing, someone who's indispensable to the organization, the Jack Welch model, if you will. And when I think about the great leaders that I've had the pleasure of knowing, watching, working with over the course of my career, I think that is a flawed model, and I'm certainly not the first to say that. The great leaders are the ones who have, I think, demonstrated more of what I think is sometimes called, servant leadership, being more concerned about the success of the team, being more humble, more authentic. And, I think, the people who've done that, they achieve a couple of different things. One is that they earn the trust of their teams, and they do it by being accessible, approachable, and really having their teams back, not throwing them under the bus at the most inopportune time. Second thing is they know that their job isn't to have all the answers necessarily. It is to remove the obstacles and make their team successful. And then finally, it's really to help the team believe in themselves. by asking questions, but taking their ideas, incorporating the ideas, showing appreciation, and really cheering the team on. And I think the great leaders that I've been inspired by through my career have exhibited all those traits.
I love that. Amen to first of all, thank you for kind of highlighting the shift that a lot of us have seen or perhaps grew up with in terms of what leadership used to mean 20, 30 years ago to what it is now, from that all-knowing kind of, view of things to much the opposite now, which is the humility, the leading from behind in terms of servant leadership. That's so powerful. As you mentioned, you've had the great opportunity to work on some amazing brands, some amazing organizations throughout that way. What do you think from a leadership and organizational leadership perspective? What made those organizations different in the way they led versus maybe other brands that you've seen?
Well, for an organization to be successful, I think it has to have a clear vision of where it wants to go, clear strategies on how to get there, and then a set of values that holds the team together, motivates the team, inspires the team. But those things, though necessary by themselves, are insufficient. I think what leadership brings to the party at that point would be to really stay true to it, to model it, which I think we all know is easier said than done. Very easy to articulate a set of strategies, but then the first time you hit a rough quarter, you're not making your numbers, and along comes some short-term fix that's maybe off strategy. Unfortunately, it's all too easy to leap at that short-term fix, but it also undermines your credibility as a leader. Even worse, I think, is when an organization articulates a set of values, but it turns out those values are merely aspirational rather than values that are being lived by the organization. And really, the responsibility for that, I think, does start very much at the top of the house. And the key then for leadership then is to continue to think long term and to really live the values. And the ones that have done that are the ones that I've seen be lead successful organizations, successful brands, successful teams.
Beautifully said, Howard. And I think we've all seen those examples where, metaphorically speaking, we're walking down the halls of an organization, they have those values on a poster and they're beautifully articulated. And yet we all know situations where people aren't walking that talk, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you called that out. Now, in your experience, what are some of the biggest obstacles or traps to either organizations or individual leaders to leading effectively?
Well, first of all, when we say leaders, I think, I'm thinking about everybody in the organization. I think everybody can be a leader. Everybody should be a leader. Maybe everybody's leadership role isn't quite equal. I'm not going to pretend that it is, but everybody can play some kind of leadership role. And so I think that's one thing to keep in mind as I think about the answer to that question. And I think the answer to your question also flows from the last question that you had in the discussion we had. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is the culture of an organization can actually serve as an obstacle if it's not quite right. If you've got people at the top of the house who are creating a culture of blame instead of one of trust, if you've got a organization where the leadership at the top is creating a command and control culture instead of one that removes obstacles and empowers people, if you've got a culture that makes employees, team members fearful instead of motivated, inspired, you got a culture that's now an obstacle to people playing their proper leadership role, because it's you can try and you should, but if the whole culture is that way, it's hard for individual leaders pretty low in the organization to swim against that tide. So that's one that I think it goes back to my comment about the values, and with that, the close cousin of that is is obviously the culture, and that was very much, I think, up to the top of the house of leadership to model for the organization. But there's some other obstacles as well. Again, building on some of the earlier discussion, the pressure to achieve short-term goals. Now, you'd like to think that the pressure, the need to hit a short-term goal should inspire even greater leadership, because that's when you need it most. But all too often, I think we see the opposite. The reality is, some of what we would term kind of the ideal leadership qualities are the easiest to exhibit and model during, when things are going great, right?
Well
When
said.
things are going along fantastic. It's when you hit that quarter or that year where you are falling short of those numbers, you are just not hitting it. That's where the real test comes in, I think, for leaders. So I think that pressure to achieve the short-term goal, if I don't know if it's maybe obstacle, it's more of a landmine that you have to watch out for. And then then the last one I'll give you, because I think we got to be honest here, is personal ambition. Because when I think about the great leaders, and we're again building on what we already talked about, they've shown trust, appreciation. They've tried to share credit, express that people on the team are valued. But sometimes in pursuit of one's individual personal goals, their own personal ambition, people forget to share the credit, express the appreciation, acknowledge all the other people who contributed. So again, I don't know if obstacle is the best word. Maybe that was another landmine, but those are kind of watch outs, I think, in trying to be the best leader that you can.
I love that. There's so many powerful things in what you said. I mean, in no particular order, the fact that you talked about, first of all, we can all be leaders. That leadership, Audira and we have talked about this, right? Like leadership has little to do with what your formal title is or where you are in an organization. It's so much about your values, as you spoke about. The next thing one of the next things you highlighted is the old adage that culture eats strategy for breakfast, and
Right.
can so much get in the way, right? And then kind of your later point about ego. There's actually a quote from the Stoicists, and they talk about ego is the enemy. And so often that we can allow our own egos or ambition, as you say, to get in the way of leadership. And then you also highlighted that, leadership is truly tested, not in the best of times, but in the most challenging of times, right? It's a great point.
And one last, thought on this is I feel compelled to say, which is by answering, these questions the way I'm answering them, I do not want to pretend for a minute that I've been perfect at all these things for the 36 years of my career. Matter of fact, I am sure I haven't been. And I'd like to think that as time went on and with the benefit of time, I got better. And certainly now, looking backwards at the 36 years, I can think of times when I did it well and times when maybe not so much. So I just want to be, I want to come clean for your audience. My answers to these questions do not mean to suggest that I've done all of this, anything close to perfectly myself. So I'll try as I might.
Well, let me say on your behalf, Howard, that's beautiful, because you're demonstrating humility, which of course is, we just talked about, is kind of a beautiful characteristic. So thank you for kind of being an emblematic representative of that. Now, one of the things that I think all of us have read, and I'd love to get your take on, is one of the byproducts economically, market-wise, from the pandemic is what we've heard called the Great Resignation. So you have a lot of incredible, talented leaders exiting organizations for any number of reasons. From your experience, both on the corporate side now as an advisor, strategic advisor, what tips might you have for organizations struggling with how to attract, develop, and retain talent?
Yeah, so I'm not sure I have a whole lot of insight to add beyond what might be obvious to most people, but I guess I'll make a few comments. One is, the obvious tactical thing that organizations need to do is give employees more flexibility. They want more flexibility. Many employees, not all, many employees got a lot more flexibility during the pandemic because they were able to work from home, which gave them more work-life balance, even gave them to some degree greater flexibility of when they worked. And I think that, to pull back on that now is just going to be problematic. There was a time when that wasn't possible because we didn't have the technology, but now we do. And one of the, if you're looking for kind of positive things coming out of the pandemic, it kind of forced organizations to give it a try. And they figured out, boy, not all roles, but many roles, many jobs, it could work. And so now that it has been proven to be possible, it's going to be hard to unwind that, particularly for younger employees that expect that. But we also have to recognize that not all employees, not all people, not all team members are in jobs or roles that are going to let them work from home.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I would suggest a couple of things. Well, number one, even for those who can work remotely, if you've got a team that can allow more of that than you did pre-pandemic, but I would say organizations are going to have to figure out ways to still pull that team together once in a while to create some kind of team esprit de corps, team camaraderie. There's something that gets lost when you're doing all this stuff remotely. And as I've talked to a lot of people, what they've told me is, yeah, they want the option and the ability for more flexibility, but that doesn't necessarily mean in most cases that they want to be home 100% of the time. And I think that's a good thing. Again, I think teams have to come together as a team to really bond. But the last thought on this would be that because not everybody's going to have the ability to work remotely because of the nature of their jobs. I think organizations that need to step back and then ask themselves kind of what's the larger thing that people are looking for. And to me, the greater flexibility is what they're looking for, but that can mean different things to different people. But it's also the feeling of being trusted, respected, and valued. When you let somebody, when you say, you can work from home, to me, it's a sign of trust, and it's a sign of caring. Well, for your employees that can't work from home because of the nature of their jobs, what are the other ways that you can demonstrate trust, the appreciation, the fact that you value them? So I think that's what's incumbent on the part of organizations going forward.
I love what you just said, Howard. That's so profound. It's, I think we sometimes miss when people have articulated greater flexibility, what is often underneath the surface of that. There is obviously their lifestyle that they're trying to juggle. There's also a huge message around trust and empowerment and delegation, right? That's at play in that dialogue between the employee and the organization. That's such a great point. Now, if I may, on your behalf, I just want to highlight that I believe one of the many talents that you bring the world, Howard, is your passion for mentorship. I've benefited from that for many years. And if I may say, I think you're an amazing embodiment of the idea of a true mentor from a leadership perspective. What have you learned about the importance or maybe the value of being a mentor during your career?
Well, I think we all need mentors. We all need people to give us advice. Sometimes we want somebody we can go and bounce things off of, and talk to people who've maybe kind of traveled the road before us to help us on our way. I've certainly enjoyed doing that for other people. The thing I enjoy the most is when I see people succeed. So very gratifying to have the chance to work with people and see them achieve whatever goals they have in mind. Lately I've been helping a lot of people who have been in transition, kind of looking for new career opportunities, and certainly when they land that new job, that's very gratifying to see. But I think about through my career helping people do the things that they need to do to achieve their goals, whether it be a promotion, a cross-lateral move, something like that. But I think we all need someone to help point the way a little bit in terms of how is it done. And I always tell people also, what you're getting from me is a sample size of one. Go talk to a lot of people, and then you yourself will kind of put that all together and figure out the right path for you. But it's always helpful, I think, to be able to ask other people for their advice, their perspectives. It stimulates your own creativity and ideas, and helps you figure out kind of where you want to go next and how you want to do it.
Well, to bridge on that, many moons ago, when I was seeking some guidance from you, you touched on the importance of passion as it relates to the path that we may be on professionally and the impact that can have on leadership. What's your view on passion?
Well, if you don't have passion, for what you're trying to do, then nobody else on your team is going to be passionate about it either. And if you're not if they don't, if they're not passionate, they're not going to believe that they can do it. If they don't believe they can do it, they're not going to do it. So, in that sense, some level of passion is a requirement for achieving successful results. And to me, part of it is, passion is kind of a close cousin of fun. And it's kind of sometimes odd for people to think of, work as fun. Though passion comes in anything, but we're kind of talking more about people's careers right now. So I'm going to keep it to the kind of the whole work thing. But, when you come to work, you should be passionate because you should be trying to have some fun. Now, it's fun in the context of, hey, I'm working for a living and I've got, and some of what that entails. But if you're not having fun, like I used to tell my kids, you better find something fun to do as your career, because if you don't, it's not a career, it's a prison sentence, and it's a long one. So, I think you got to, if you're not having some fun at what you're doing, if you're not enjoying the challenge, enjoying the success, enjoying the people you work with, if you're not having that passion for what you're all trying to do, you're probably doing the wrong thing. You're in the wrong line of work. So, I mean, it's a long life. I go find something else to do, because you don't want to do something you're not enjoying for 40 years.
It's to your point, you don't want a prison sentence. I love that. That's great. Last quick question. You speaking to passion at the beginning of the discussion here, Howard, you talked about a number of things you're doing outside of your day job, so to speak. What are one or two things that you might share that you're actively passionate involved with outside of work?
Well, thank you for that, because I'm going to take the opportunity to plug a nonprofit that I'm involved with as a board member, which is Markland. So Markland serves individuals who have profound developmental disabilities and special care needs. They have 3 campuses in the broad area, each one with its own day school, as well as community day program. And I got to tell you this, the great team at Markland, from the caregivers, the nurses, the teachers, the key administrators, all of them, they do such a phenomenal job taking care of the people in their trust. And it's particularly, I tell you, through this pandemic, it's been inspiring to watch them. It's inspiring to be, involved with them. And, the organization has a vision, and even I'd call it a promise, which is to make everyday life possible for individuals with profound disabilities. And part of that is, part of making that a reality, I guess I would say, is trying to figure out new ways to make that a reality, to ever expand the services it provides. So, I mean, it started out with the different residential services, expanded into community day services and day schools. And we're looking at other ways to expand how we're going to serve this population. And I got to tell you, I'm just very, proud to be part of that organization in a small way and contribute in whatever way I can. The real heroes there are, of course, again, these caregivers on the front lines, the nurses, the teachers, the administrators. I mean, they are doing a phenomenal work with a group of folks that need help. And anyone out there listening to this who is so inspired to help Markland, would certainly appreciate it. Go to www.markland.org, and there's certainly ways to donate and other ways to get involved. But it's a great organization, and it's certainly an honor for me to be part of it and contributing in some way.
So inspiring, Howard. Thank you for sharing that. We'll be sure to get the word out as well to help you.
Thanks.
And once again, shows how you're leading from behind, from that leadership servant perspective. Howard, thank you so much for your time today. It was truly inspiring. We really appreciate it, and can't wait to continue to follow all of your efforts going forward. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Good seeing you.